So, James chopping, my breeder supply, I love my pups. I've got cats running around, they might knock over a camera. If they do, we'll just pick it up and keep on going. Today I want to talk about heat cycles because I get quite a few calls about people's doggies who are having heat cycles. And so I'm going to talk about a normal heat cycles that are irregular, heat cycles in older dogs, delayed heat cycles, split heat cycles. All right, so let's just start with the framework of what is a normal heat cycle in a dog. So the problem is this is a standard dog. This doesn't mean it's your dog, and it certainly is not every dog. But the normal situation is, I'm going to count this as 0. This is the beginning of the heat cycle. And most dogs ovulate around day 9. This is ovulation. And most dogs are bred around day 11 through day 13. That's when most dogs are bred. This is the normal breeding. And if you didn't know anything else, and you had no other information on your dog, and you were just going to time it based just simply on when you saw first signs of blood, you'd breed on day 11 and 13, and you'd probably get success maybe 70% of the time. So what is this? This here is first little droplets of blood on the ground, You can see in the bedding, if the dog's wearing some panties, if the dog sleeps on the bed with you, you'll see some blood stains. Before that, and this can be, a whole week before this, you may see some changes in behavior. So this is just the precursor, the precursor to the actual start of heat. The dog wants to go muck around with other dogs' rear ends, stick her rear end up into other dogs' faces. Her vulva is starting to puff up and get bigger. Might see that, might not. But that is an indication that day 0 is coming. Most dogs, you'll see some drops of blood on the ground. That's day 0. And this blood might be a little bit at the beginning, a little pinkish, but it gets to be quite a bit heavier. Whoops, just dropped my pen. It gets to be quite a bit heavier flow as time goes on. And maybe more red in color. Let me get my pen back from the cat there. So, still a bit of blood, lots of blood. And this varies. May look like a murder scene. You may even have a dog that hardly cleans itself a lot, or other dogs around clean that dog, and you don't see much of it. When we get to day 9, the blood flow has almost stopped, and it might be more. In fact, we can do it a different color here, because typically around ovulation, this dog's discharge color has become more pinky in color to a vanilla color. You'll still be some discharge probably, you'll still see it. If you take it, one great way to do this is to take a clean napkin. If you've got panties on a dog and you just look at the panties, the old blood in there turns brown and black, and it's kind of confusing. You're much better off to take a napkin and swab the back end of the dog with a napkin and look at that color. It's a much better indication of what's going on. And what you will see is when we start to get to this area here, that in most dogs it'll have got much pinker or maybe even clearer in color about this time here. So this is the time that the dog has ovulated, which means that the eggs have physically been dropped. Those eggs have to stay in the uterus wall for 2 days approximately before they're ready to be fertilized. They're not mature enough. That's why we don't AI right at ovulation. We AI a couple of days later. So I've drawn this graph a ton of times. I'm just going to do it again. Let's look at progesterone levels. This is progesterone. Progesterone. And this is in nanograms per milliliter. There are other scales. In Europe, we use moles per milliliter, and you have to divide those numbers by 3 approximately. But in the USA, we almost always talk about nanograms per milliliter. Okay, so where are we here? So this is a 5 is ovulation. That's that point there. And there's 10 and there's 15. And we're AIing on a 15. So we're a 15 somewhere in here. So here is the rise. Now, for the first 5 days, which is somewhere in here, day 5, the level's typically below a 1 or around a 1. So this is a very slow decline. Then it takes about 1 point a day, and then it almost doubles every day thereafterwards. So, normal heat, first signs of blood flow gets bigger, blood flow lightens up and changes to a more pink or vanilla color. Dog is going to be bred a couple of days later on a progesterone level of something about a 15 or higher. And I recommend that you continue to breed until the numbers are up to at least a 20. So these are the numbers that you want to breed on. All right. So that's a normal one. So now what happens if it's abnormal? Because that happens a lot, especially in young dogs. So in young dogs, what happens is, dogs that ovulate maybe when they're 8 months old, is that the heat cycle is not very smoothed out yet. The engine's not running on all cylinders. And so what you see here is maybe a heat that starts up and there's some blood flow and then the whole thing dies down. And then 2 weeks later, there's some more blood. The whole thing's very irregular. It may go on for a long time. It may not hardly happen at all. But don't worry about it. A dog that is less than a year old, its heat cycle typically will be irregular, and you, in my opinion, should not breed the dog until it's at least over a year old anyway. So don't get worried. I get people call me like, oh, it's so weird, it's different, it's not what I expected, should I be worried? No, it's just the engine getting going, that's all it is. It's just a young dog. You know, it's the same thing with humans. You know, female women, teenagers, they have, a very irregular kind of a menstrual cycle that kind of smooths out as they get older. And then some women, they have, very, very differences in the hormone levels that are present, behavior, and all those things in women. It tends to vary a lot. And somebody may have a very easy time with it, and some women have an awful time with it. So it's going to be the same thing with dogs. So don't get worried about your dog if it's less than a year and 3 months old and it's not having a very smooth heat cycle. Quite normal. And I can tell you this, the hardest dogs for me to get bred are dogs that are between that year and a year and 4 months old. Those are the ones that we're not as successful as the ones that are older than that. We tend to try to breed them and we don't result in puppies. That can happen quite a bit. And then we come back and breed them on the next cycle and everything's great. So split heat. So let's get this. Do we have anything here we want to keep? No. Let's just get rid of this stuff here. Keep the days on there. Get rid of the graph. Now let's talk about a split heat. So what is a split heat? A split heat split heats, again, tend to happen in younger dogs. Dogs that have split heats might have other split heats in the future. And I see this also in older dogs, like five-year-old dogs, where they tend to, I'm talking about Frenchies here, other dogs that live longer than Frenchies that may happen later on in life. But anyway, a split heat is where the whole thing's getting going, you're seeing some blood, vulva swelling up, you take a progesterone level, and progesterone level's like, at a 1. All right, great. Okay, so then someone talks to me and I say, when should you test again? And I say the answer is, test again in about 4 or 5 days. So you're thinking that 4 or 5 days and the level should be here, but you test again and the level's even less than it was before. It's done this, right? Okay. And then you do another test another 5 days later and it's gone up. And then you do another test another 5 days later and it's gone down. And you do another test 5 days later and you find it's gone through the roof. So the problem with this is this is doing this roller coaster ride and you just cannot predict exactly when this dog is going to ovulate. I can tell you this, I quite often see dogs that have split heats where they've been rocking around the numbers that are between 1 and 3 and all of a sudden, blam, it's just a rocket to the moon. And you've got to be careful because you want to catch this. So they are definitely a challenge. The thing to look for probably is when this thing starts taking off, what's happening to the blood discharge? Because most of the time, the blood color will start to lighten up about the time they're rocking and rolling. And so that gives you, if you have been testing and your dog has had some relatively low numbers bouncing around, keep swabbing the dog's back end with a paper towel. And if that's not getting you any color, get a Q-tip and stick a Q-tip up in a vulva and an inch and roll it around and look at that. And then keep a record of that. Take a picture of it every day and look at the difference in colors as the days go on, because that's some useful information. You could test every day with progesterone, but the problem is, it varies from $50 to $150 per test. And so it can get pretty expensive to just start testing like crazy. I have a progesterone machine, I can do it. It just cost me $9 to do a test. 50 minutes later, get the results. When I have a dog like this, I test every other day. Keep track of it in a book and keep track of where we are. That way we don't miss it. But split heats are a challenge. And they can go on for many weeks before the dog has got to the point that the whole process is ready. The dog is ready to be bred. Okay, so now let's talk about extended heats, short heats. All right, so let's just get rid of this graph here. So most dogs, and that we're going to call this day 8. Most dogs are just starting to get to some reasonable numbers around day 8. They'll have a number of around a 4 on day 8. But a dog that goes quickly goes like that. And so you come in, you test at day 8, and you find that the dog's already at a 20. You should have bred probably a day or two earlier. So you've got to be careful. If you've got a history of dogs that have what I call short cycle, where they get going quickly, and you found that out, next time, do some tests early so you don't miss this quick, rapid rise. Then you've got dogs that have the split heats, and then you've got dogs that just have a protracted long time before they get up to here. And those dogs, it might be 2-3 weeks down the road before they're ready to be bred, and they have a really extended heat cycle. So that's another one to watch for. So again, the way to find this one out is to swab the back end, look at blood color, great indicator, and then do the necessary progesterone test. And then the next thing is, how long does this whole cycle happen? What is the whole length of the whole heat? So most dogs are going to be bred on about day 11. We're going to call that there. All dogs, regardless of whether they have been bred or not, I better go off the screen here. All dogs, let's get out a little bit so we see it. We'll just move this number over this way here. Make 11 right here. All dogs, regardless of whether they've been bred or not, the progesterone level rises when they go in heat. The insemination, the fertilization, the mating does not alter the progesterone levels at all. Whether a dog has been bred or not, the whole process goes on exactly the same way. The difference is, if the dog has not been bred, then of course there's no egg there that has been fertilized and no puppies are going to result from it. But everything else is the same. So what happens is that dogs do this progesterone level rise, and by the way, we'll make these numbers more like 30 and 50. Numbers go up and they stay high and remain high until right at the end where whelp's going to occur. And this is about, from when you first saw the heat, is approximately 70 days. It's about 70 days. And to be exact, from the point that you breed, from the AI, a level of 15 is 61 days. 61 days. So, regardless of whether your dog has been bred or not, if you do progesterone level tests on your dog and its progesterone level is high, like 30, 40, 50, then that dog has already gone through the beginning stages of heat, and that dog, if it's been bred, maybe it gets to have puppies. If it hasn't been bred, it's going to be another 2 months after this, another 2 months or more before it comes back into heat. So the whole cycle is about 10 days of bleeding, about 60 days of high progesterone levels, and then that takes about 2 months, and then about another 4 months, I think I wrote that down wrong, another 4 months after that, until the dog goes through the same cycle. So if you look at a long whole year here, this is progesterone level, you see a rise, you see a drop, and then the whole thing starts up again. And here we go. So this is typically, on most dogs, every 6 months between these events. So a dog can have 2 litters, if you wanted to, 2 litters in a year. Some dogs are 5 months, some dogs are a whole year, or maybe even longer. But the normal process is every 6 months a dog goes into heat. Not all dogs. All right, I think I've probably said enough about this. So there's the other thing is that people get worried because their dog's not coming to heat yet. So I see this one quite a lot. My dog is 10 months old and I haven't seen a heat cycle yet. It's fine, not a problem. Just let nature do its course. Most dogs will have a heat cycle before they're a year old, but some of them don't have a heat cycle until they're a year and a quarter old. Just the way that it is. It's just the way they are. Now there are some things that you can do. There's a hormone it's used for pigs called PG600 that people inject that to bring dogs into heat. I've never done it. I don't like the idea of this particularly. I think that maybe if you had a dog that's 2 years old that's never had a heat and you really want to breed the dog, that maybe it makes some sense to try some PG600. I've never been in that situation. All of my dogs have eventually always come into heat, and just be patient is my advice. But there's people who swear by this and they use it routinely. get bigger litters, but I don't know, I just don't like mucking around with nature if I can avoid it. I like it just to kind of go its own course. I think it's safer, better for the dog. I've heard some things about PG600 that would scare a person, but there again, you know, there's just not enough evidence here to know exactly what's going on. So if your dog's taking its time, just go with the flow and chill and enjoy your dog. It'll all come out fine, probably at the end. I mean, occasionally there are dogs that just can't conceive, but I mean, they're pretty rare. If you've got a dog that you are having problems with, you just can't get the dog pregnant, then go get a CBC, go get a complete blood count. Go to your vet, spend $50, $60 and go look at the dog's blood and make sure there's not something like a low thyroid level that's causing the problem. There are other things that can cause problems. Another relatively common one is a dog whose progesterone level doesn't stay high during the pregnancy. If you had a problem with that, I'd recommend doing a progesterone test partway through, maybe 4 weeks into this, and make sure the progesterone level is above a 25. And if it's not, then maybe it's time to be giving it progesterone shots every week or two to keep its progesterone level up and maintain the pregnancy. But that's a conversation to have with your vet. I think that's enough of this. Hey, as always, thanks for watching. I know you've got other things that you could be doing with your time. If you like what we're talking about, subscribe to us. We've got great products. Go take a look at them. And remember, be nice to your doggies. Hey, have a great day. Bye.